In this edition of The Kong Show, we'll be talking about art, and we'll be featuring art like this created by Mr. Frank B. Shaner. Now, if his name sounds familiar, it might be because he was on the radio for many years in Honolulu. And during that time, he also performed as a stand-up comedian. And he released a Nahoku Award-winning album, Nahoku is like a Grammy in Hawaii, for his comedy album titled Adventures of Leimomi. However, a few years back, Mr. Shaner abandoned his broadcast career, packed his bags, and he moved to upcountry Maui, creating artwork nonstop in his studio on the slopes of the extinct Haleakala volcano, or Haleakala crater. And that's where we're catching up with him now via FaceTime from our studios here in central Tokyo. Now, during our conversation, you'll see various pictures of some of his artwork, which he'll explain, and we'll also be hearing some custom-made musical transitions like this by another artist from Hawaii, Mr. Richard Nato in Honolulu. And so now, from Tokyo to Maui, let's say aloha to Mr. Frank B. Shaner.
Aloha, kamasami kong desu.
Yeah.
How are you, Robert?
I'm doing okay, but we're talking about you today and your art. What are we looking at here, Frank?
What you're looking at is a mixed media.
Mm-hmm. It looks very musical.
Very musical. As a matter of fact, this big show coming up for me on the 15th of December, and I know we'll talk about that, is all musical instruments, musically oriented. The theme is music and the like. So, in this piece, I believe what we're looking at here is a mixed media, and what I mean to say is that it's part acrylic paint, it's wood, it's all on wood, no canvas, and I've used foam core for the instruments. I had a very sharp razor blade that sculpted these pieces out, and I threw them on this board and arranged them in ways, and then painted over them with acrylic paint.
So it's three-dimensional?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It pops off the board there.
Frank, let's talk a little bit about you. A lot of people have been saying, what happened to Frank B. Shaner? Where did he go? Why did you give up your broadcasting career to move to Maui and paint?
Well, I got to say that I've been painting for quite a while, you see. And, you know, the radio business, and I was in it, I guess, about 35 years in Honolulu. Mm-hmm. And speaking of all that, you, ladies and gentlemen, in this conversation, Kamasami Kong was my inspiration to pursue radio, which is a weird and wild, wonderful story, but that's for another day, I'm sure. But as far as the painting goes, I started, I don't know if I told you this story, but I was working on the radio. I had a partner. It was early morning drive, and it was the day of 9/11 when the Twin Towers in New York City crashed to the ground. Okay, quite remarkable. We're sitting in the studio talking about what's happening, describing people leaping out of windows and the crash of these two giant towers in New York City. It was unbelievable.
What station was this, Frank, and who was your partner at that time?
Brickwood Galloteria was my partner. And it was Hawaiian 105. It was a Hawaiian radio station. And we played all Hawaiian music, obviously. And we were doing this show, and we were just, for 6 hours, we didn't play any music. We just talked about what the heck was going on. And after the show, Kong, I got into my car, and I was in a daze, honestly. Now, understand, leading up to this, I never painted ever in my life. I've always found art to be interesting, and I've always gravitated to it. I was a constant doodler, but never really picked up a paintbrush or canvas and so forth. So I'm driving around Honolulu in Waikiki, just driving around, just trying to wash my brains. And I pulled into this art store, and I thought I had no reason to be in this art store, but I pulled in there and I started buying paintbrushes, paint, and canvases, took them back to my apartment, set them up, and never stopped since.
Interesting.
Every day.
Frank, I want to hear more about this, but right now, let's take a look at another one of your art pieces. This one seems to be something that you called Jazz After Midnight, another piece that evokes a musical atmosphere.
Well, music, as you well know, especially jazz, it's very creative. It's impromptu. You can keep a certain line of music, but jazz gives you the ability to dance and to go off and play. And that's basically what this art is, what you're looking at right here. And the musical instruments, especially the guitar, to me, I don't play an instrument. Let me just say that. The guitars, to me, are very sexy.
Interesting.
And they emote passion, they emote love, they emote beautiful music, you see. And if you look at the curvatures of the guitar, you can see many beautiful ladies in this musical instrument, and that is why I'm so enamored. I know that's a big word, Colin. I am so enamored at the beauty of this musical instrument.
Well, B.B. King named his guitar Lucille, as you may remember. So,
yes.
He gave his guitar a woman's name. And, of course, Jake Shimabukuro at one time named his ukulele, but I can't remember the name that he gave his ukulele. When you're painting instruments, are you listening to music in the background? And if yes, what kind of music do you listen to when you paint?
Well, that's very interesting. It's a myriad of music. My brain, you got to keep it. I got to keep my brain moist quite often because it starts to wander, and then I find myself getting into trouble. So while I'm painting, especially jazz is very important. Bill Evans is one of the jazz people that I revere, and on top of all of that, Oscar Peterson.
Oh yeah,
is an artist that just blows me away, man. So Oscar is the king, and of course then there's Vladimir Horowitz, who's a remarkable concert pianist. He's no longer on with us, and many other jazz guys that I love to listen to. There's a quartet called the Hot Club San Francisco, which is fabulous music also. And I just let it go in the background.
All right.
Bach, Beethoven.
Oh, yeah, Bach and Beethoven. I can easily understand how those artists inspire you to push paint, along with those jazz artists, Bill Evans, Oscar Peterson, Vladimir Horowitz, and Hot Club San Francisco. Oh, yeah. Speaking of inspirational music, right now, here's one of those inspirational transitions created by Richard Nato in Honolulu. We're looking at another one of your pieces of art. This one is called Rockstar. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, a lot of people say, hey, that looks like Steven Tyler.
Yeah, it does.
But
what was the inspiration for this piece?
Well, it was absolute madness for me. It was the night I was just not feeling well at all, and I just wanted to scream. Mm-hmm. And I was I can't really remember what the situation was, but it was at midnight, and a lot of things happened for me around midnight. Mm-hmm. And this image just started to come out. It just started to emote. And I have to say, I was inspired. Are you familiar with Pink Floyd's album, what that Scream?
Dark Side of the Moon. Yes.
Yes, the Dark Side of the Moon.
Right.
That, I saw that cover, man, and it blew me away. And I never forgot it. So one night it just started to come out of my my system and landed up, and there it is.
Frank, I want to talk about a few other things that are happening in your life briefly, so please make a comment when I mention these things. Adventures of Lemomi. What can you tell us about that?
Captain Ramon!
Adventures of Lemomi was it was a serial, how would you say, series on the radio during my time at Hawaiian Music and various other stations. But at Hawaiian 105 for 10 years, this every morning show was on, and it talked about this Hawaiian girl, Lemomi.
Wow.
And it had about 5 or 6 different characters, and then I played all these characters.
Yeah. Amazing.
And Big Mac Kanak, Kinky Bodinky, Denise was part of that.
Meanwhile, back on the trail, the lovely Lemomi and Higgins the butler continue to make their way to Punaluu Back Town, hoping to catch up with Big Mac Kanak before heading to Honolulu to be with the Queen upon her request.
Lemomi, so many other people, and they all came together. I every evening I would write a couple of notes down on this paper to bring into the show and do it live.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Let's talk about your career as a stand-up comic. You tried that for a while too, right?
Yeah, stand-up comedy is still part of my life. You know, all of these things, I never released them at all. They're still very much in my soul. And stand-up is a wonderful way. You see, during my radio time, I would go out on the stage after the show and in the evening time and try to find a stage to get up and talk. Because a lot of people know me on the radio, but I did it selfishly because I wanted to get in front of people and see an audience reaction. And it made me a better radio person, if you will. Because I could get up and tell stories and talk and get goofy and see some laughter, see what doesn't work, see what works. And it was a wonderful instrument for my radio time.
Are you still doing stand-up comedy?
I do. At various times, I had a couple of gigs on the Big Island this past week. And it's all improvisation, you know, when I do these things now. I don't try to write anything down, but I just try to pick stuff up that's happening at the moment, you know, within the confines.
So are you talking about politics at all?
I talk about politics in a sense where, like Mauna Kea, you know, there's this big political tug of war going on with the natives, the indigenous people of Hawaii. And this Mauna Kea, which is this magnificent, beautiful, sacred mountain that houses these telescopes.
Sure.
I'm sure you're very familiar with all of this.
We're looking at one of your paintings of that right now. Apparently you did a piece of art called Mauna Kea.
Yes.
Did you paint that on the scene, or did you go there to Mauna Kea to paint that, or how did you do this painting?
Well, what happened was that my girlfriend and I, we went up to the top of Mauna Kea just to be with the indigenous peoples, the natives, the Hawaiians, the Bradas, and just to find out what exactly is going on, because there's a big encampment up there, right? And they're right at the base of Mauna Kea, Great White Mountain. And so I was just talking story with them. I came back, I started to paint. And one of the biggest complaints is that they got too many telescopes up there that are not being used any longer, and they just sit idle. And then they want to bring in more telescopes and more. And right now, there's about 14 massive telescopes up there that are not used, and they're just sitting there. And they feel it's it's not right for them to desecrate this mountain. Now, there's two sides to every story, don't you know?
Of course.
And so the politics of it is that I just painted this piece, and I put a myriad of telescopes up there to show what it will look like in the future if we don't stop this.
This piece has somewhat of a comedic effect. It looks like one of those editorials you would see in a newspaper or magazine.
In the New Yorker.
In the New Yorker, yeah. It's perfect for that. Frank, we have a question from a gentleman who owns an art gallery in Osaka, Mr. Takahashi of Tempozan Art Gallery. Which would make you more happy? If the original work sells for $1 million to one person, or you sell postcards, $1 postcards of your art to 1 million people? Interesting question.
Yeah, well, yes, it is. But I know exactly what I would do. I would certainly talk to that individual who wants to buy my painting for $1 million, and I would take that cash right on the moment. Because why would I wait for postcards to go around the world and wait for 1 million people to send them back $1? No, I want the money now so that I can continue my art.
Mr. Takahashi also wants to know, why do you paint? What's the reason that you paint, Frank?
Well, that's probably for an artist. That is probably the most difficult to answer. But I can only answer it, and I can only quote, and I'm going to quote Vincent van Gogh. And when I read this, it clicked with me so beautifully. Vincent said, "The reason why I paint is so that I don't have to think."
Interesting.
And I tell you, man, when I'm painting, I'm not thinking.
There you go. What is success to you? What would success be for you?
Yeah. Success is getting up every morning to paint. I mean, if I can do that until they throw dirt over me or just lean me up against a backboard, that's success to me. And whatever happens from that, if people are interested in my art or however they want it, sure, you want to pay some money for it? Fine, I'll take it. But getting up every morning to paint is very important. That's a successful life, I say.
I know we're jumping around here a bit, but I want to ask you about your early days as a tour guide. You used to work on a bus as a tour guide, right?
That was probably one of the greatest jobs. By the way, I've never worked a day in my life. I want to let you know that.
Okay.
And you know this.
Yeah.
Yes, I used to. People from America would come to Hawaii, and I would meet them at the airport, get them on the bus, and I would take them in to Waikiki and put them up in the hotels. Then I would set up a little desk down in the lobby. They would come down, and I would be with them for 1 week. I would take them around the islands. I was an escort, and possibly the greatest time, because what that did for me was twofold, is that I got up in front of people and I started to talk story, right? And tell jokes, and they can't leave because they're on a bus, so they have to sit there until I'm done with my opening remarks.
Captive audience. Truly a captive audience.
Captive.
Frank, I know, as I said, we're jumping around a lot here, but there are so many things that I'd like to cover and give our listeners a chance for them to know about you. While you're painting, do you eat, drink, or smoke anything while you paint?
No, not at all. As a matter, I don't even think. Like I say, when I'm painting, I'm not thinking. And as far as I will stop and break for a meal or whatever it is. But as far as smoking, drinking, or anything of that nature, no. Because what happens, and I'll be honest with you, I enjoy a little smoking some good Hawaiian stuff once in a while. Certainly. But I know that is such a powerful, stimulator in my head. And if I saw something that did something, I would have to go back again and smoke to try to get to that point. And I don't want to do that.
I see.
It's like before you go out on stage, you want to, do a poke, you want to do a hit or whatever. I don't want to do that because the next time you go out, you're going to feel insecure. Oh my God, I got to have a hit, man, before I go out. I don't want to do that. I want to go out clean, do the gig, and then after I'll smoke a little bit and drink a little bit and talk about what just happened.
The reason I ask that about food is because you did a piece called Flying Chopsticks. And when I looked at this piece, I thought you were probably hungry when you created this black and white piece. Tell us about this Flying Chopsticks painting.
Well, a local boy, right? Hawaii, born and raised. And Saimin, ramen was part of our lives growing up in Hawaii. Rice cake, fish cake, and sushi, of course. And I was just thinking that, gosh, what if there were flying chopsticks and I wasn't stoned?
That's a very original thought. I don't think anybody else has ever vocalized that. What if there were flying chopsticks? Okay.
But consider the possibility. Well, I tell you something. I can see me eating a bowl of beautiful ramen. Some of the stuff you showed me pictures of sometimes that you go into those great little clubs there, and I would be thinking, my gosh, what if flying chopsticks were flying around in this place, or they came through the window and they started to scoop up my ramen, my noodles? I'd be upset. So I started to put this piece together, and it's actual chopsticks that are flying in that piece, by the way.
All right.
And I put wings on them, and I had some noodles dangling from the end of the chopstick.
Very
moving
interesting.
down into my bowl and consuming it, and me running out of the restaurant chasing after that chopstick.
Frank, I knew your mom, and she was also an artist. Did she inspire you to paint?
Oh, my mother. Oh, my God, you're going to make me cry. She was this kind of human being that just floated. She had this way with her that you could look at something and we're driving along in the car. She says, "Stop the car." And she'll get out of the car with her clippers and start clipping plants. And I'm thinking, my God, Mother, it's 10 o'clock at night. She would go out, gather these things. Come, okay, we're good. And we would continue on. The next morning, there would be a beautiful bouquet or an arrangement on the breakfast table or at dinner. And she just had that way with her. She would make these Christmas ornaments that people in the Kona village would always come by her house around Christmas time. And she would give them away. And I says, "Mom, don't give them away. You can sell this for $10 each." Oh, no.
She was a beautiful lady. I did enjoy spending time with her. Frank, your art is currently hanging in a restaurant, in several restaurants in Honolulu. One at Ala Moana Shopping Center, and a very popular restaurant there called Asagio's. Is that right? Is your art still in that restaurant?
Yes, it is. It's going on almost 5 years. Well, I think even probably longer than that. And they gave me the whole restaurant, which is amazing.
Yeah, they did.
And you've been there. You've been to the restaurant.
Not only have I been there, but I understand the very famous movie star Tia Carrere has been in there too, together with you. What's that story?
It was a date. We had a date. She called me up. When she comes home from her time away. And let me digress just for a minute.
Yeah.
Is that Tia Carrere, Kamasami Kong, ladies and gentlemen, listen to this, we were all part of this big show called Brown Bags to Stardom. And this young lady was on there, and she was a singer, and she didn't win Tia Carrere, but she went on to be a fine actress and made some pretty major motion pictures, don't you know?
She's a big Hollywood star.
So she would come to town and she would call me up and say, "Hey, Frankie, let's go have some martinis." And I said, "I'd love to." And I'd pick her up. My car was kind of bust up. I wasn't the greatest car, but she loved it. And she would be all dazzled, man. She didn't have to put on much to be fabulous. Mm-hmm. So we went out and went to Asagio and had dinner and cocktails and, and she says, "Well, what's all this on the wall? This wonderful art." She said that, and I was hoping she would say that. I said, "Yeah, well, look at this art. Isn't it great? Let's go see who did it." And I brought her up to one of the pieces, and my name was on there. She said, "Hey, this is you." I said, "That's right. I'm a big star." Mm-hmm. Then I ended up taking one of the paintings off and giving it to her. Oh, my God. Fantastic.
Frank, which do you prefer, oil or watercolors or acrylics?
Yeah, I love all of that medium. Where I'm living these days, I live way up close to Haleakala, this magnificent volcano on Maui. I'm at the 4,000-foot level, so it's very cold, and oil doesn't dry quickly, even if you're in lower altitudes. So I use acrylic because it dries faster, because I am constantly painting. I'm constantly in my studio, and so the paint dries fast, and I can move stuff around quickly. And that's acrylic is what is my featured paint. And also, I got to say this, and I'm going to pronounce the name wrong here, but I use pens for a lot of my work, and they're from Japan, and they're called Pocha, Pocha. It's a fabulous product from Japan. I just love using it. And on these guitars that you're seeing right now, a lot of that color is on there. So we're in communication, man.
All right.
I got Japanese paint.
Frank, you said you're painting up on Haleakala. You said you're at the 4,000-foot level. So would that be the pine area or the grass area or the silver sword area?
It's in between. So there's pasture land.
Pasture land.
That go forever.
So you have a studio up there. Do you ever allow people, tourists or fans to come in and watch you paint? Or would you ever consider that?
Well, that's interesting you should say that, because we were just talking about that and setting up a little board outside. Say, hey, come on up, artwork for sale and this and that and so forth. And I have not done it, but sure, if people want to come by and visit and come talk stories, sit down, drink some wine, some sake, and talk art, I'd love it.
We're looking at another piece of your art, a much earlier piece. And this one is all in black and white. It's called City by the Bay. What can you tell us about this? And what were you thinking when you created this piece of art?
As soon as I tell you where it's at, you will see the images in this painting. San Francisco, baby. City by the Bay. And if you look closely, you can see some movie reels. You can see sailboats. You can see bridges.
Oh, yeah.
You can see museum fronts. It's very abstract. And I love that piece. And it's hanging in Asagio's, Ala Moana.
Is it for sale? And if yes, how much would someone have to pay for this piece of art?
My art is very reasonable.
$10?
Gosh, I never sold one for 10 yet.
Yet, huh?
No, They range from 1,500 to 3,000.
I see.
You know, that's where my prices are.
I'm going to change the subject briefly because we're looking at another piece of art that's totally different this time. It looks like it's a picture of some koi fish, and it's called A Day in the Sun. And this is so different from your other piece, City by the Bay. What can you tell us about A Day in the Sun?
Yeah, interesting. I got to tell you, not many, but a few people have told me, says, Frank, you're so undisciplined. I said, what do you mean by that? I said, well, you got to stick with one subject matter, And I understand what these people are saying, but, my brain is such that, I can paint 20 guitars, and beautiful. So sometimes after doing a long stretch of focusing in on one particular format, I like to wash my palate. Maybe swallow some wine, okay, sure, and lean back and think of something else, just to clean my head up. So this piece right here is something that just kind of washed over me. And a lot of koi. I love koi. I love the fish pond. I love the man-made ones that I see in Japan. They're so magnificent. I long to go to Japan and to walk into the shrines and walk along the bridges and look at koi. I want to get on the train and go out to the country and sit in a fudo and just relax and sit ducking. And that is what that painting means to me.
Interesting. We're looking at another piece here of someone sitting in a chair, kind of drooped over, with light coming in the window. There's a shadow. This one is titled, There's Nothing Funny About. What can you tell us about this piece of art? What mood were you in when you painted this?
The title is There's Nothing Funny About Comedy.
Ah, about comedy. I see.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yes. Comedy is not funny. Comedy is tragedy. And that's why we laugh. We laugh at somebody who can take tragedy and turn it around and make us laugh and feel comfortable about a tragedy. So this particular piece reminds me of that. It also reminds me of people who get into situations in life and can't seem to get out of this depressive attitude or doldrums. So, and I've been there, man. I've been there many times, and I don't push that stuff away out of my head. I don't try not to engage in that, because depression and feeling lonesomeness, to me, is a powerful expression, and I use it to paint.
Is this a self-portrait?
I would say it's real close, man.
Interesting. Let's brighten things up a little bit right now. You have another piece here. A piece. I love this piece. It's called Russian Hill. A very colorful piece. What was the inspiration for this?
Okay. That's San Francisco.
I see.
And the windows in San Francisco are so magnificent. The kind of English style homes that were built back at the turn of the century are still stand in many places, as you well know. And these windows that jet out from these apartment dwellings always, it stimulated my brain. And that flag on there is a gay flag.
A gay flag?
It's the rainbow flag.
Oh, okay.
For the gay community. And I paid tribute to San Francisco and its gay community. I have a lot of gay friends on Maui. They're fabulous. They're all artists or, on stage. And they love it. They love it. We laugh so hard sometimes.
Frank, where can people see your art? I guess you must have a presence online somewhere. How can people find you online? Do you have a Facebook site or Instagram?
Well, I'm not very good on a computer. I'm not a very learned computer person. And I hate sending people to my website because it's really nothing to look at. And I always say, man, if you want to see it, see my stuff, you got to come and visit me, or go into Asagio's Ala Moana or in Kahala.
But what about your friends from around the world, from here in Japan or from other countries? How can they see your art?
Okay. Well, yeah, and thank God for the internet. I have this website entitled, the address is frankbshanerart.com.
That should be easy enough.
And the other one is Fine Art America. And when you lock on to that, Fine Arts America, just put my name in there and it'll bring up my space on this website. Because there's many other artists on there. But if you were to want to find my work, you just drop my name in there and it'll bring it right up.
We're on the line talking with Frank B. Shaner. Frank is in Maui, yours truly, Kong, here in Tokyo, Japan. Frank, how would you define yourself as an artist?
Since I was brought onto this planet, those young days growing up, I've always sort of wandered off. And
I mean, would you say you're an abstract artist, or are you a Picasso-style artist, a Van Gogh-style artist? How would you define your style?
Well, something I like to, certainly, when you look at art, you will have a tendency to borrow stuff, right? Mm-hmm. As in great writers, they look at a wonderful paragraph and they, my God, I wish I wrote that. And I would see a piece of paint on the wall and say, God, that's fantastic. I hate this person who did it because it's so good. Mm-hmm. And it stimulates my head. And when I'm painting, a lot of that stuff will seep in, and I try not to copy it per se, to just let it flow. It's like comedy. You listen to somebody else, you get an idea, you latch onto it, you move in different directions.
Sure.
But the impetus was from that one thought.
Whenever I show a picture of your art to someone, they always say it looks like he's been inspired by Van Gogh.
Well, there's no doubt about it, man. Vinny, Vincent Van Gogh, as they say, Vincent Van Gogh, he was the work of art. Everything else around him was a byproduct, whatever came from it. Vincent Van Gogh was the art piece because he was so complicated. He was very introverted to a degree, but genius. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to read Letters to Theo, his brother. It's a book, and it's all the letters that Vincent would send to his brother, his only one he communicated with. And when he was in the insane asylum, he would communicate vastly and brilliant stuff that he would write. I get very emotional when I think and speak of him. I really do.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's, when you say that I'm a Vincent, I can honestly say that I went to New York City, man. I went to the Metropolitan Art, and I stood there and looked at Starry, Starry Night and wept. And played Don McLean's Starry, Starry Night, paint your palette blue and gray. And had it on my phone, and there was people around Vincent. Then everybody was always crowded around Vincent's stuff. And I held my hand up playing that song, and everybody was shocked. And they couldn't believe it, that sound was coming out while we were listening to Vincent.
Interesting. Well, Frank B. Shaner, we are running a little bit short on time, so we're going to have to take it out of here. We're looking at a picture of, I guess this is St. Damien, bringing the light of hope to kind of take us out. Remind us about this painting. It looks like Father Damien is sitting on a horse or a mule or donkey, and he's holding up a light. Tell us the story about this piece.
That painting, I spent some time down in Kalaupapa on Molokai, and I did an MC Christmas show, and I was on this twin-engine plane that went down into the valley, It was the most remarkable time of my life at that particular point. So I met the people who lived in Kalaupapa who had Hansen's disease.
Also known as leprosy, right?
That's right. We toured the church, the St. Philomena, where Father Damien held his services. And I walked into this church, and I noticed in the pews there were holes on the floor.
And why holes?
Yeah, well, and I asked my friend who was taking me around, why are there holes in this floor? He said, oh, yeah, but the leper, the people with the disease, they get a lot of gala. They choke sometimes, So instead of leaving the pew to spit, Father Damien, in his genius, put holes inside the floor that they would just spit from there so they wouldn't miss the sermon.
Interesting. Wow, what a story.
So the painting came from that. And it was Father Damien bringing the light of hope to Kalaupapa.
Very interesting. Frank, I just want to say thank you for taking so much time.
I just want to say one last thing,
sure.
Tom.
Go ahead. Absolutely.
All right. First, I got my solo show coming up on December 15th, and it's going to be on Maui. And it's open to whoever is listening who's going to be on Maui around that period of time to come down and check it out. I think you have an invitation as well. Maybe you can put it up and so forth. But I would invite anybody, if they're coming from Japan, to come and visit the show.
Frank B. Shaner, thank you for taking so much time to bring us up to date about what's happening with you, your life, your art, and your future. By the way, what are you planning for your future?
It's happening right now. I'm not planning anything.
Just taking it day by day.
Absolutely.
All right.
And for you, Kong,
yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen listening to this, I just want to let your listeners know that this man behind the microphone here in the Hawaiian Islands is a legend. He brought radio to the islands like no one has ever heard before. Now, this was back in the 70s, back in the day, and when he brought his brand of radio to the Hawaiian Islands, it shifted everything. It was an earthquake, and it inspired me to be part of this thing that he did every evening. This wild and crazy, wonderful talk story on the air. People would call in, they would audition, they would sing, they would play their musical instruments. What a time and space that was. And Kamasami Kong is a legend in these Hawaiian Islands, as he is in Japan. And that's all I want. It's going to cost you some money.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how much I'm going to have to pay you for those accolades. Thank you very much for saying that, Frank. You have a birthday coming up here real soon. How old will you be on your next B-Day?
I'm turning 72, baby.
Man.
And December 30th, 1947. And you know something? They still, at Queen's Hospital is where I was brought into this world, and they still have that room roped off as a museum.
You make me choke with that one. And, I believe that. I totally believe that. A while back, one of our colleagues, Tony Taylor, was asking in some Facebook stream, he was saying, whatever happened to Frank B. Shaner? Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, Tony and everybody else around the world, you know what is happening with Frank B. Shaner. He has turned out to be quite an amazing artist, and his art certainly deserves a second and a third look, and maybe even a place in your home or on your wall. Frank, again.
Well, I can't wait to get to Japan, man. I'm waiting on. I want to come to Japan and fill up a space with my art. Maybe that'll happen soon.
We'll keep our fingers crossed, and I'll keep my eyes crossed for you.
Yeah, I'll keep my legs crossed, too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Frank B. Shaner, thank you, and mahalo, and mele kalikimaka.
Hole makahiki ho, brother.
Bye.